Okay, I will take it as as everything is good. I wanted to have the session as a little bit of brainstorming, a little bit of experiment, and let's see where it will bring us. If you have any questions during my speech, I'd love you to share it right away or raise your hand and speak. But I also have a chat. How can I unmute you? Wait, I didn't know. Oh, okay. I can unmute you. Or let me do this.
There we go.
Okay.
We all have to press the unmute button if we want to be unmuted now.
Okay, good. Unmuted. I think everyone. So yeah, if you want to be unmuted, now it's only your power.
Thank you.
So welcome to this. Oh, I'm so glad to hear voices. I don't like speak and, you know. So let's start. Welcome to this experiment. It will be mostly experiment on how actually open-minded are we with our perception of a new paradigm. Let's say, let's put it this way. And we all know about existing problems, right? We all know about food crisis, potential water crisis. We know about climate change with CO2 emissions. We know about meat industry and its deforestation and how cruel it's towards animals. There is a lot of problems, a lot. And those just a few. But we are doing good in terms of that we'll at least start talking about this, at least start thinking globally how to solve this, what should we tackle in order to solve it. And even the United Nations came up with 17 sustainability goals, right? And they have some questions that we need to answer to achieve, to solve some of these problems. And those are great. If you, I don't know if you read through this, but these are good goals. I would have just two questions to it. First would be, do we really need to sustain, as it's sustainable development goals, do we really need to sustain these common practices, rules, and values of existing systems? Or, that's the first question. And the second question would be, if we would ask nature itself to help us to solve this problem, what it would suggest to us? Would it be like all the problems separated one after another with linear approach to solve it? Or it would come up with some ecosystem when one problem is kind of a solution to other. Hello. So that would be my two questions. And answering the first one, let's think about how the system exists now. So it's basically the growth in sake of the growth, right? And we know that this is a cancer cell ideology. So it doesn't hurt to sustain it. It sounds like it's a good decision to sustain this growth a little bit, to not just grow further, but just stop and just try to sustain what we have. But it seems like you don't have to be a scientist to understand that this is just slowing down the process of no return point, right? And the only way to avoid being doomed is regenerative approach. Not only sustaining, but regenerating. And I know this word comes up more and more last days, and but everything would become even more clear if we, for example, try try to call all the existing practices with their kind of alternative names. For example, let's take industrial agriculture. Sometimes it's called extraction industry, comparing with regenerative agriculture that calls even carbon farming, carbon storing. So these different names could help us understand it better. But because, and answering the second question, because for us as humans is not very easy to come up with some system that would serve all of the parts of it equally, as we used to use linear logic, linear language. It's kind of hard to just create, okay, we will do this and this will solve everything. But we keep trying. And as I said, we should start with something that we all agree upon to make it as a base to further, to include further solutions to this base. And if we talk about regenerative practices so much, last days, last months, maybe even last years, why not to start with regenerative agriculture? For those who don't know yet, regenerative agriculture, I will read it, is a term that is often used as synonymously with carbon farming. It's a set of practices that builds organic matter back into the soil, effectively storing more water and drawing more carbon out of the atmosphere. So we know this is good, right? This is good, this would work, we should try to do this. Does anyone have questions upon this? So is there some doubts about regenerative practices being the best solution for farming for now? Or someone think that agricultural, conventional approach to agriculture somehow is better?
I mean, regenerative seems like exactly what agriculture is. It's organic. It regenerates itself because each fruit creates seeds. So it is regenerative at its core. We may have lost track of that, but going back to the core of it seems to make sense to me.
Back to the core is another word to apply to the whole solution. If we look at this globally, regenerative and going back to the core, to the roots is kind of very close here, right? And you can imagine how communities lived before. What it was before, it was just some communities that were farming, that were maybe exchanging goods with other communities, and they were sustainable. They lived in harmony with nature, and seems like everything was good. And everything starts being wrong when someone decided, hey, you can domesticate not only plants, not only animals, but you can domesticate humans as well. And they start searching for the ways to domesticate humans. But it's separate theme, and we can talk about this later if we will have time. But for now, I want to focus on regenerative agriculture, how to make it efficient to help all the parts of our system thrive. The need for food will never cease, probably, right? We will never stop eating. We will never stop drinking water until we are in these bodies, at least. You never know. We always will need food. We always will need water. How to deploy this fact to thrive as a whole? And I came up with some sort of solution And now we can kind of frame the solution together here. So imagine if we would have a global network of regenerative farms that would sustain itself. Of course, it would produce food. Someone is making noises. Who is this? Who's making noises? Okay, it was Martin. So imagine the system. We have global network of regenerative farms that set the farm in some local community, and this local community produce food that that grows the best in this territory, and then it sells this food to local community without export, without import, supporting local economy as well. How to make, what other problems this global network of regenerative farms could solve? With regenerative agriculture, it could help climate change, right? Because it stores carbon, as I said before, it helps water, store more water, it helps with soil.
iPhone. Anika's MacBook Pro. Michael's MacBook Pro. No.
You want durian?
Yeah. Don't worry about this.
Okay, good. Don't forget you're unmuted, guys, some of you. So I want to hear your ideas how this network of regenerative farms could serve as a solution to other problems. And then I will continue with solutions that I came up with. Is there any ideas among our audience? Okay, I will. Okay, you can. I think I am muted everyone. No? Well, I will try it again. I don't know why it's making mute you again.
There we go. Now we have the ability to unmute ourselves.
Okay, good. So do you guys have any ideas upon how we can create this network as efficient as it could be?
I'm excited to hear Ksenia's.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Ksenia, I'm reading your
Yes, my comments.
for example, we could solve the problem of deforestation with regenerative farms.
Yes, that was my initial thought. What do you think about that? Do you think that would be possible to do?
Yeah, we can. We definitely can. For example, if we tackle the reasons of deforestation as let's start with meat industry, right? As I mentioned before.
Yeah.
With regenerative farms, first of all, I think we should promote mostly plant-based diets.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, there are some opposition to this idea that plant-based diet couldn't feed all the people in the world. Or
I think another problem with the plant-based diet is that, to be honest with you, that's what I found during my own journey. And because I used to be a meat eater, because that's how I've been raised, you know. And then I came to England 4 years ago, and because of the whole community here and like the vegetarian kind of movement, I started to apply small different practices in my own diet. How can I, become myself vegetarian? And in a year time, once I stopped eating meat, I found myself having anemia, this thing when you have an iron deficiency. So to be honest with you, I think this problem is, it can take, it's like it's a nutritional problem. So it kind of moves us to think about what we eat, as in on a nutrition level, you know, what vegetables have, I mean, how much proteins does each vegetable have for us to have a healthy diet. So I think, yeah, educational aspect of the problem is very important, to educate yourself and educate everybody around you. And yeah.
Thank you for your opinion, and I understand this fully, as I heard it a lot. Like, how can we switch to plant-based diet if it doesn't give us all the nutritions according to existing knowledge? Let's put it this way. I'm not a nutritionist. I can't give advices like this, like, hey, let's go all based on plant-based diet. But I can say for myself, I have uh, the first type of blood. I don't know how it's called in English,
Yeah,
but it's the most like popular one, and they say it's carnivore. You should be a carnivore in order to survive with this.
you should
First,
be who?
carnivore, like you should eat, and it should
Oh,
be
right.
a lot of meat in your diet. I never listened to this, so I stopped eating red meat 8 years ago. Then probably around 3 years ago, maybe four, I stopped eating chicken, and just a year ago I stopped eating fish. So I understand that when you completely change your diet right away like this, because
Yeah,
you know that it's bad,
yeah.
and it can bring some harm to your system.
Mm,
By logic, even you used to one thing and then boom, you don't have this thing
yeah.
anymore. What's going on here? But I think you can train yourself to anything if you will take the right approach, if you will feel inside yourself what is good for you, what is bad, and what is like strict restriction, or what is your real desire to
It's
do.
like a listening to your body approach. I
Kinda.
agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah.
I can.
But talking even about the meat industry, I believe I talk with a lot of people actually who wants to invest in laboratory grown meat, when instead of having a whole livestock, now it's much more efficient, and thank God it's much more economically beneficial. When you have, instead of whole livestock, you have a little laboratory, and you can grow your food from like on 20 meters square meters place. So that's the future of the meat industry, I think. Anyway, it's unavoidable because people would try to do something that require less effort, let's say, right?
But let's come back to the regenerative farms that as you started. Could you, yeah, tell us more about that, and the home thing that you're a founder of the home, right?
Yes, I'm the founder of the home, and we decided to implement this idea of how regenerative processes, how regenerative approach can restore not only soil, water, food system, and these obvious problems, but also how it can restore our community. And let's imagine the place. I'm sure everyone was in this situation when we felt like I can't ask anyone about something. I feel lonely. I have so much problems. I don't know where to go and what to do, and or I lost job, or this and that. Almost all of us was in this position when we just wanted to, I don't know, disappear, or just this kind of desperate
Devastation.
devastation. Yeah. And just imagine if it would be a place where you could go, and you can, you know, you will be accepted as you are, and you will be cherished, appreciated, and you will be valued anyway, in any case. And it's a nice, cozy place. It's not like a prison or shelter or anything. It's a place that just welcome everyone. And at the same time, it's self-sustainable place. And
Very
that's
romantic idea.
what I want to do with these regenerative farms. So
Wow.
it's not only would be a network that's producing food that helps local economy, that helps with all these obvious crises, but also helping people to restore connection with nature, to reconnect with healthy community, and just to offer people alternative, right, to what we have now.
I've got a question for you. Have you heard about this project called the Healing Biotope project? Healing Biotopes project. Yeah, if you check it out online, check it out online. They kind of have the same concept as you are talking about, and they have a land in Portugal, in Tamera. I'm currently listening for their online course, which is quite interesting. Where they, kind of sharing their vision and sharing the 25 years of research that they've done in this research center. And what's interesting about it is that they're building community on the foundation of trust and cooperation. And it is, it kind of resonates with what you've just said. So I think it would be interesting for you to also check out this project and maybe, connect even with them, because what I personally think what we need in this regenerative community that we're all trying to build here is that we need cooperation. It shouldn't be just, just different parts here and there. And that's what I think we lack as a sustainability, let's call us crew.
I completely agree with this. And what we are doing now, instead of creating all ourselves, it's so good that you brought it up. Instead of creating all ourselves, all the system ourselves, we appreciate all the efforts that already were done on this way, and we invite already existing structures to collaborate.
Right.
So we have our site, yourhome.org, you as like first letter of universe, you are home.org, and you can see there is some milestones that we're going to take. And for now, we created a global collaboration platform where any kind of entity can enter, go through the process of registration according to their type of entity, like organization, company, organization, community, media person, or like volunteer specialist, this and that. And they can register, and we can, instead of just, as I mentioned, creating everything ourselves, we can just combine all the efforts. And this is the main idea, because collaboration is the main thing now. We can't compete with each other anymore. That's the value of the previous system. It's capitalism that teaches us that competition is the best way to like thrive. But it's not. We all know it's not, and it's just making us weaker and dividing us. So I completely agree with it.
Could you set some examples of like which methods are you using in order to connect people to nature, in order to connect people between each other, and what kind of methods are you using, or have you already started maybe, or you have something in mind?
So we have different methods how we will execute this project, and one that I particularly like, according to people connection, is it was offered by our health department leader, Stella Bay. She said that instead of patronizing people all the time and giving them solutions and just, I'm talking about community that we will have on our farm, instead of this, we can separate them by groups in which they can, there are like 12 people in each group, and in each group they can split on free person, and each problem, each topic that they have, they can discuss through three positions. So at first it will be a person who talk,
Mm-hmm.
a person who listens, and a person who just stay aside and analyze what's going on. And these positions are changing, so everyone can be a talker and a listener and like kind of out.
Mediator.
Yeah. So I think this approach is very good in order to create trust between people, because even when you go to psychotherapy, psychotherapist, you speak from position of kind of victim or whatnot, and
Mm-mm-mm.
the person was at the same position. He is like me, so I can trust him or her, and I can be completely open. So this is just one of the. It's a huge concept that I can talk about hours and hours.
Thank you. Very beautiful. Sounds insane.
But I didn't finish the last part of this. And just imagine this beautiful retreat center where we can do yoga, we can do music together, we can grow food together, and have a community supported agriculture. And as I see it, all these efforts, all the regenerative communities that we're seeing now, it's a little bit kind of missing something. And what I think is that until we have literally all the parts of community inside our regenerative community, it will not be anyhow better than the previous system. And what I talk about is displaced populations.
What's
Is
that again?
displaced populations, homeless
Oh,
people,
yeah, exactly.
refugees, and because I'm talking with a lot of people who have the same efforts. They understand that regenerative practices and communities, it's important. But when I talk about, how about these people who are displaced? How about
Absolutely.
people who really need home, and we can help them, and they can help us as well? So it's like they're the same people, and then the problems start arising.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm open-minded, but I'm open-minded for this particular group of people, part of the community, but not for this. So that's one of the main idea that we're gonna focus on. That it will be literally open for everyone.
Inclusive.
Yeah.
Inclusivity. But do you understand, like, to tackle the problem of, bringing the gap between poor and rich, let's call it, it is what it is. To tackle this problem is, well, I think this is probably an evolutionary process, something that will take us decades, I don't know. Well, that's at least what I think, because, in the system that we live at the moment, it seems like the gap is only increasing, and the real tools and the real practices out there to tackle this problem, I personally, well, there are charities, there are social businesses, there are different organizations which try to help locally here and there, but there is not a unified global system, which,
Yes,
yeah,
I so agree. That's exactly the idea. We should tackle on the roots. Like, I hope I have like 1 minute more, please. Like, we want to restructure people's approach to. Is it really cool to show your differences from other people by showing your like kind of luxury? You spend more or you consume more. Is it really cool? So it's one of the ideas we're also focusing on is just erasing the importance of the physical appearance of the all the values that we have now. So
Yeah.
it's also part of the project, and I encourage you to go on our site and have a look what we
I've
are.
already texted you on Facebook, so.
Nika, that really clicked for me. Wow. The idea that you know, the gap between rich and poor doesn't matter so much when you don't feel so cool for having all those luxurious, expensive things. The gap becomes so much shorter when being, you know, being rich is just having a home and a place to call
Yeah.
home and family and friends and the basics and the little things on top of that. So
Yeah.
that'll help with the gap. I love that. That's such a great
Right.
lesson.
Really good
Thank
idea.
you.
Really good news. Someone wrote me that there is no session after us. Maybe we'll continue this
Ooh.
for 30 more minutes.
Justin, turn on your camera. That's
All right, give me a minute. I actually woke up just for this, so I got to get out of bed and put on some clothes.
It's 3 a.m.
But yes, I'll turn on my camera. Hold on.
So for, I wanted to say something. For, what were you talking now? What we
the gap between rich and poor.
yeah. So we are also working on separate project in the home concept. So one of it is, it's just one of it, the sustainable clothing production and clothing consuming approach.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, we have a project when we're preparing the project when the person will be buying some nice clothing stuff, clothing item, and it will be executed with the concept buy one, give one. So you buy one and we give one to someone in need, some homeless person or whatnot. And it's the same piece of clothing. So it basically will show that we can wear the same clothes with people who can't afford this, but we don't shame of this, or we want this. We support the idea of equality. So this is one.
But how does it work? Can you go a little bit more in detail?
We're still preparing it. It's not executed.
Right. Okay.
One of the way we will execute it is the upcycling contest that we're doing now, when designers can offer upcycle some donated clothes and sell it, and either sell it, either donate it.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, we more promote an upcycle approach to the clothes instead of consuming. And the other way is just on our site, we will have items of clothing of sustainable designers, of course, who deploy sustainable approaches. And if person buy one item, we will just deliver the same item to person on the streets. And we have community. Before we did actually homeless gems. I don't know if you heard about this, but we had really nice gatherings with homeless people on the in what's the name, in Venice Beach and in Skid Row. So you know what is Skid Row, right?
No.
It's an area in LA where people live in tents mostly, and it's like the biggest homeless population lives there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the biggest in the world, of course, but the biggest.
Is it like a campsite?
It's not a campsite. It's actually downtown. It's downtown. But the problem is so ridiculously huge there that people just claimed this area is there, and it's really people outside who are not homeless from other areas, they afraid to go there. And when people heard that I want to set the first homeless jam festival there, they were like, "Are you crazy? What are you going to do there? Like, stop it."
That's crazy. To be honest with you, you know what else I've heard? Because to be honest, I kind of like to talk to homeless people sometimes, you know, just if I'm, you know, going somewhere and I see a homeless person, sometimes if I have a minute, if I have a spare minute, I would stop, you know, and just talk. And, you know, sometimes I find people who made this choice to be homeless, who wants to be homeless.
Yeah. Yes, there are people like this, and when, for example, when we went to invite people to to our homeless jam, it's like we're 3 days before the actual festival, and we went there for first time in my life. I've never been there before, and I spent such a good time there. We were dancing with them, we were singing with them, and they're great people. And the fact that they live on the street doesn't mean that they're some not people anymore, right? And we had beautiful time. But some of them, I talked with them and they told me a lot of stories. Some of them really chose this way of living, and but most of those people who continue the story of like, I chose this way of lifestyle, they say sometimes you choose this because you don't like like this world is fucked up, and I don't want to live in this world, and this way of living is not for me. So I decided to go against the system. But the system doesn't like those free-minded people. It will not support your decision. The system needs you to be in the system. So everyone who goes beyond this will be punished. And they punish them with a lot of restrictions, with stigmas, with so much stuff that change this concept of free lifestyle or just being free human to being just homeless with really bad stigma on it.